Episode 3. Before meeting Koichi, Jingfan's university life was no different than that of everyone else. She was energetic and full of life, and there was a sense of pride about her that made everyone else jealous. In China, there were very few students that attended major universities at the time, and Jingfan happened to be enrolled in the most well-known foreign language program around. All students accepted into the foreign language departments at Jinghua University were either prodigies or star students with excellent language skills and moral conduct. There were only 16 students in Jingfan's class, but they were selected from a pool of countless applicants from all over the country. The number of students admitted was especially low, thus simply wearing the school's pin was enough to invoke looks of envy from everyone around. If only she had not met Koichi in the first place, she surely would have been able to score a job with a large enterprise, marry a successful man, and enjoy a happy, ordinary life. Yet, God decided to pair her with Koichi. This was the life she had been dealt. Chance encounters tend to lead people down a totally different path than what they would have originally chosen for themselves. Jingfan's life path was also significantly altered by such a chance encounter. It happened on a drizzly afternoon 5 years prior. Jingfan headed towards the School of Classical Chinese to meet a study partner that her friend Xinlang Feng insisted on introducing to her. That day was still perfectly etched into her memory even now, as if it happened yesterday. Due to the drizzling rain that had been falling constantly that day, Jingfan tried to cancel her plans to meet this study partner. But since Xinlan persistently continued to try and lure her out of the dormitory, Jingfan was left with no other choice but to accompany her along the tortuous road to the School of Classical Chinese. The road to the school was quite rough due to its location atop a hill, and visiting the school meant that they would be forced to climb all the way up the muddy hill, which was wet from the rain. By the time they reached the School of Classical Chinese, they were both sweaty, and there were muddy spots on their pant legs and shoes. Realizing how muddy their shoes were, Xinlan pulled out the tissues from her bag that she prepared in advance and handed them to Jingfan. Before Jingfan even realized what these tissues were for, she noticed that Xinlan had already started neatly wiping her shoes. Xinlan was not usually the type to care about her appearances, so when Jingfan saw her uncharacteristically paying attention to her looks, she thought to herself, "Wow, the power of love." Normally, this would be the time for Jingfan to tease her, but today, she was highly impressed by this development. Jingfan continued to keep these thoughts to herself until Xinlan suddenly whispered into her ear. "Look, there he is, over there, the guy in the white t-shirt and black jeans. See him? The tall one. What you think? Isn't he hot?" Jingfan looked in the direction Xinlan was pointing. On the other side of the lobby, she spotted a man looking at something on the chalkboard. She could not make out his face because of how far away he was, but she sensed a mysteriously charming aura about him. "Wow, he really is tall. Are you sure you want to pair me up with a guy as good-looking as him? You might regret it," Jingfan jokingly asked Xinlan. "What are you talking about? He's not my boyfriend. He's just a study partner. Anyways, we've already planned this out. I'll study with him on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then you can have him on Tuesday and Thursday so our times won't interfere. It's only been a week since I partnered with him, so don't get the wrong idea. I'm begging you, please don't say anything weird to him. Japanese people tend to act more serious, and they're sensitive to jokes." Jingfan wanted to laugh as she watched Xinlan try to explain herself with her cheeks turning red, but she held in her laughter and nodded. Then, Koichi Mizuno, who had been standing in front of the chalkboard, noticed the two girls talking and walked over to them. As he approached, Xinlan introduced them in Japanese. "This is Jingfan Qin. She is my close friend. Jingfan, this is Koichi Mizuno, my Japanese language partner. Starting today, he will be your language partner too." After Xinlan's introduction, Jingfan greeted the attractive man in Japanese. "Hello, it's nice to meet you." "We've already met before. Don't you remember? This is our second time meeting," said Koichi Mizuno with a snicker. "Second time?" Jingfan's gaze was mysteriously fixed on Koichi Mizuno. He was tall, his hair was black and dense, and he had a pair of kind eyes which seemed quite knowledgeable. Along with his slender, attractive nose, he also boasted lips sexy enough to make the women stare. Jingfan realized for the first time that the lips of a handsome man can also possess the same powers of captivation as that of a woman's. He was certainly a handsome guy, just as Xinlan said. His smile was kind, and the way he spoke was delightful. He was able to make those around him feel relaxed with his humor as well. He was sophisticated, but he was not superficial. The aura that emitted from his body could surely make a prisoner out of any girl's heart, and surely had in the past. Koichi Mizuno was genuinely a wonderful man that she would never forget. Any girl, not just Xinlan, would be bound to fall in love with him at first sight. Nevertheless, Jingfan failed to remember this man despite how attractive he was. She searched deep into her memories as she stared at him awkwardly. She thought it impossible to forget meeting someone like him. But no matter how hard she thought, she was unable to remember the lucky encounter they shared. Meanwhile, Koichi Mizuno silently observed Jingfan as she sincerely tried her best to remember. His eyes twinkled with mischief and expectations, and that passionate gaze stagnated Jingfan's train of thought. Seeing that she was unable to remember in the end, Koichi Mizuno chuckled. He pointed at a motorcycle stopped in the parking lot outside and said, "Have you forgotten? I met you at that motorcycle accident. I think it was about a month ago?" A light bulb went off in Jingfan's head as the motorcycle finally jogged her memory. She recalled the month prior when she was on her way to a lecture on William Shakespeare. A child was dangerously close to colliding with a motorcycle when a young passerby swooped in and prevented an accident. To think this was the man clothed in white that put his own safety at risk to save that child's life. She was shocked to learn that the man was actually a foreigner. In a daze, Jingfan once again stared at the man standing before her. It was him, no doubt about it. This man was the hero who saved that child's life. She was truly embarrassed to completely forget him despite the two of them being mistaken for the child's parents. Lifting her head to notice his eyes lock onto hers, her face suddenly became red as she looked down at the floor. She naturally started to avoid eye contact with him, and her head tilted more towards the ground. "You're kidding me! You two already know each other? I guess I didn't have to waste my breath introducing you." Xinlan continued blabbing from the side, unaware of what happened between them and oblivious to their emotional connection. With that, Jingfan had once again become acquainted with Koichi Mizuno. From that day onward, the two would become language partners and begin studying together. Soon after, Jingfan discovered that Koichi Mizuno was a student of Teikei University. On top of that, his major was Chinese literature with a concentration in classical literature. Her jaw dropped. As Jingfan was often called literature girl by her friends, she and Koichi hit it off instantly. Naturally, the conversations between Jingfan and Koichi went beyond simply Japanese and Chinese language studies, venturing into Chinese history and ancient literature before spreading into Japan's Sengoku period and the Meiji Restoration. From Sendai to Lu Xun, and from Dream of the Red Chamber to the Dancing Girl of Izu, they never ran out of topics. They were both fully engrossed as they talked to one another, and they began to mutually feel as if they had found their other half. Jingfan noticed how Koichi possessed an exceptionally deep knowledge of Chinese literature, and as a foreigner in China, he had his own way of interpreting and analyzing thousands of years of Chinese history and culture. He talked about his unique opinions openly with Jingfan, and his passion highly impressed her. They shared such fun times together. Not much time had passed since first meeting, but they both developed strong urges to meet each other more often. However, they kept those urges locked inside their hearts without ever revealing their truth. Through literature, poems, and artwork, their souls increasingly grew closer and closer together, and they understood one another without having to express their feelings in words.